Good evening. I hope some of you are able to join me tonight for my Facebook Live in my closed group, and do invite others to come and join the group, where I'm going to be doing more and more Facebook Lives to give some really useful information to support gut health and digestive health, and in turn support overall health to your body. So I hope you're having a good week and getting out and about more. Not so much sunshine at the moment, is there? But let's hope that's going to pick up soon. So let me get started then, and I will record this, so that's going to be available for you to watch later on, or indeed, invite other people into the group and they can watch this too at a later time. So I particularly chose tonight to talk about antibiotic use. The reason being is I've had a couple of clients contact me, get in touch with me because of the impact of having taken antibiotics and then having subsequent symptoms that they're struggling to return to good health from, and so they got in touch with me as a result of that. So it sort of sparked me to think about sharing some information about antibiotics, bit of background about them. We know actually in general that doctors and the medical profession are not encouraging the use like they used to, but that's for different reasons to what I'm going to talk about. And therefore what we can do, and we absolutely do need to use them, what we can do. Now, before I get started about that, I would like to say that my course that I've been working on in the last couple of months is now available to purchase. So this is my course that's aimed at people with IBS symptoms or IBS related symptoms, digestive symptoms, where you have tried all sorts of things and you're struggling to get your life back under control, get things under control. So I've created this course specifically for you as a self-help course. This is now available to purchase, and I'll add the link in afterwards, but there is a page set up on my website, which is peytonprinciples.com. And that link will take you so you can purchase that course, which is £27. It's low cost. It's a video recorded course. It's so easy to follow. And there is so much useful information in there, specifically designed for you to pick up, easy to follow, and they will definitely get some great help from purchasing that course. So do go and take a look at that on my website, but I'll add the link in here afterwards as well. So antibiotics, we know that we use antibiotics to help when we have some sort of bacterial infection. And I'm sure most of us do know that if we've got the common cold or any sort of viral infection, for example, COVID-19, viral infections, they do not work. You need antivirals for virus infections, but when it's bacterial infection, and if it's taken a hold, and if we can't shake it off, then we may be offered antibiotics. And we do need to take them for some serious conditions. But if we're struggling to shake off some sort of cough or something like that, then you will be advised to try and fight that first of all, because our body should have that natural ability to fight off infections, and sometimes it just takes longer to recover. But when there's a serious infection, then we will be offered antibiotics. Now, the problem's been, of course, that over the years there's been an overuse of them, and so we've developed and we are developing, as humans, as the human race is developing, this antibiotic resistance to them. And therefore what that means is that we are struggling, and the pharmaceutical companies are struggling to bring out new strains and types of antibiotics that are going to be effective. And so we're trying to limit the use so that we don't get to a point, which we do hear these concerns, that we're getting to a point where the body is now going, oh yeah, it's just another one of those antibiotics. I know that's not going to work on me anymore, because I now have become and developed a resistance to it. And they work by stopping the reproduction of bacteria and killing them off. But of course, the resistance means they're just not going to do that anymore. Of course, they were fantastic, weren't they? But I found some studies that showed that before we had antibiotics, 30% of all deaths were due to bacterial infections. So they were fantastic. Of course, it's not just down to the use of antibiotics, because since the 1930s to the current day, the use of the hygiene that's available to us now is completely different to what it was back in the 1930s. So, we know they have reduced deaths, but we do need to be careful. So if you do find out that you need to take antibiotics, I will come on and talk about what you can do to support your gut health, because the problem is with antibiotics is, just as it says on the name is on the tin, that they destroy bacteria. That is what they're designed to do, but they're not clever enough to protect gut bacteria, and they're also not clever enough to protect the beneficial bacteria that we find in our mouth, this oral microbiome. And they're also not clever enough to protect what we're now learning about more is the vaginal microbiome, which is also hugely important. So we've got trillions of bacteria that reside in our gut, as well as bacteria in the mouth and in the vagina. But focusing on the gut microbiome, we've got trillions of bacteria, and we have this state of balance between the healthy beneficial ones and the ones that are not contributing to our health, and if they were allowed to flourish would actually be detrimental to our health. Now, what can happen is that we start to destroy the beneficial ones when we take antibiotics. And the research is showing, when they've done studies of and done stool testing to look at the bacterial strains before taking antibiotics, and then looking at the results and doing stool tests again following only a week's course, a 7-day course of antibiotics. And they've done lots of studies looking at different types of antibiotics, and they've done the comparison. And what they find is that the diversity has completely changed. We've lost a huge amount of diversity. That means we've lost loads of different types of beneficial strains of bacteria. And we've also lost the numbers. The population has completely decreased by significant numbers. And some of the research is showing that it may take 2 years to bring up the numbers, but they're also showing that actually the diversity never fully recovers in that period of time. So, why does that matter? Well, these bacteria, as we know, have huge roles to play in huge areas of our health, and we know specific strains have particular roles to play in different types of health. But overall, we know that this diversity is creating 70 to 80% of our immune function, not only in protecting us, but modulating immune function. So that stops an overproduction of immunity, which can lead to autoimmune conditions. So it has a huge role to play in autoimmunity, protecting the mucosal lining, which therefore goes on to help create the environment to allow beneficial bacteria to grow. It helps protect the gut lining and stops it becoming porous and leaky, which may allow toxins and other types of non-beneficial substrates to pass through into the bloodstream. So many roles. But we know we want to keep this diversity and this balance in check. And I like to think of it as scales, that when everything is in check, you don't have a problem. One of the things that we know when I was researching this talk was that C. difficile, the Clostridium infection, can be created when we've taken antibiotics. And so C. difficile is something that is known to be a potential problem when we've taken antibiotics. So if they know about C. difficile, then we also now know about the more subtle shifts in the bacteria population. When I say subtle, I've just said that can be huge changes, but more subtle in terms of symptoms to the body. So when we get this dysbiosis, this imbalance that can take place, and this change in the diversity and of the composition of bacteria, then it can slowly start to chip away and create problems. We can start to see diarrhea. we can start to get changing bowel habits. We can start to experience bloating. We can start to experience cramping. We can start to have problems with the digestion of our food. And in time, this can go on to lead to other symptoms that may not seem to be related to gut health, but could be linked indirectly, systemically to that. So I've sort of given you a bit of a worst case scenario, but I think it's really, really important to understand the impact of taking antibiotics. And unfortunately, doctors think and say that taking antibiotics, that the gut microbiome, they probably won't call it that, but everything will be fine. You can take antibiotics, it's not going to cause a problem. And from a C. difficile perspective, that's probably going to be the case. It's only in the worst case scenario that there could be this C. difficile infection that occurs. But that's not to say that you're not going to upset this very, very important and sensitive diversity and the microbiome that exists in the gut. And the length of time it can take to recover. So what can you do? I advise all clients, if I know that they're going to have to take antibiotics for any reason, to immediately start to think very carefully about their diet and to think about taking probiotics. Now, I will just say here, sitting here today, 14th of July 2020, whenever people start watching this, that at this point in time, the jury is out on probiotics and the impact that will have longer term to the recovery of the beneficial bacteria. We have used probiotics for a long period of time, and I do believe at this current point in time that we should take them. There is not enough research to say they do nothing, because I do genuinely believe they do have a beneficial role to take. And I've seen it myself with clients taking probiotics, that they start to feel better. But I think they actually help by providing beneficial bacteria. But I think the jury is out in what they do longer term in increasing numbers. So these probiotics, which provide good bacteria to the gut, do they actually stay there and multiply? And I think that's where the jury is out. But if you take an antibiotic, I think it's really important in the current information that we have to take probiotics. And I would start to take them straight away, and I would take them at a different time of day. Now, I know antibiotics are normally timed, but I would try and take them at least 2 hours away from when you're taking your courses of antibiotics. Often we take antibiotics, say, 3 times a day. So if you take one first thing in the morning at 7 o'clock, at 8 o'clock, then try and take a probiotic maybe at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. So it's taken well away from when you take the antibiotics. And it could have a really important role to play in just protecting those good bacteria that are residing in the gut today. So start on the probiotics. The other important thing to do is to keep on top of taking good levels of fibre. So we should be taking 30 grams of fibre today, but making sure we keep up our fibre levels or increasing the fibre from what you're doing today. It's quite a lot. Most people probably only getting about 18 grams of fibre. So look very, very carefully. Brown rice, whole grains, lots of vegetables, small amounts of fruit. Are you seriously getting a significant amount of fibre into your diet? If you're not, could you do soups? Could you do some juicing during this period of time when you're taking antibiotics to just help increase the amount of fibre that you're getting into your body? Are you eating lots of diversity? Because we know the different colours and the types of vegetables that we're eating help to support levels of good bacteria in different ways. And there's so many different strains. We know there's 1,000 species, I think, of different good bacteria. So take lots of different, eat lots of different vegetables, lots of different plant fibres, just to support keeping and trying to protect those good bacteria that we've got there while you're taking your antibiotics, and keep that up after you finished your antibiotics afterwards. Try and avoid the sugars, try and avoid the processed foods. All the things we know are also going to destroy good bacteria. So keeping up good foods, the fibre, but really being very, very careful to minimize your intake of sugars, processed foods, processed fats, alcohol. Keep that down to an absolute minimum. And then there's lifestyle factors that we need to pay attention to, because we know stress has a negative impact. So are you keeping stress levels to a minimum? Not easy, I know, because if you've got some sort of bacterial infection that's serious enough to warrant taking antibiotics, then you may be feeling quite stressed. But anything you can do to help lower the stress response in the body is going to be beneficial to you. Making sure the exercise you're doing, do exercise, but are you doing the right sort of exercise at the moment? You know, focus on the exercise that's going to lower the stress response and not add to the stress response. So is now the time to be doing your spinning classes? Maybe not. Focusing on walking, fresh air, getting outside, some gentle jogging, but not intense endurance running, for example. Not really high impact HIIT classes at the moment. That's something that's going to be a bit more gentle. So keep moving, keep exercising and getting the fresh air, but making sure perhaps it's a lower pace, lower impact at the moment to help the stress response as well. And focus on the sleep as well, because sleep is also very, very important. There is another supplement called Saccharomyces Boulardii. It's actually a yeast, and it's not a negative yeast like you may think of as Candida albicans, but you know, yeast, this Saccharomyces Boulardii, can be very beneficial if you're taking antibiotics. And because it's a yeast, it won't actually be destroyed. But Saccharomyces Boulardii can and has been shown to be really beneficial to help support and protect the beneficial bacteria as well. Longer term, there are prebiotic fibers, but that's getting into a bit more in-depth help and support that I provide to my clients in terms of helping a recovery longer term, especially if symptoms have become quite chronic. You know, prebiotic fibers are probably the way to go on a long-term basis. So I hope that's been helpful to you in understanding why antibiotics have this negative impact and what you can do to help. And, you know, if you are suffering from, as long as it's not life threatening, but if you are suffering from some sort of bacterial infection, unless it's life threatening, then do try and take time to allow the body to recover. We feel that we should, you know, we've had some infection for a week and we should be better. But, you know, we need to allow and support our body to work through these things. And whilst it can have an impact on our day-to-day life, that just support the body to try and work through these things, that we're not taking antibiotics unless we really, really need to, because it does have such a detrimental effect. Broad spectrum antibiotics are potentially worse on the gut microbiome overall than the single spectrum, but that's really a discussion to be had with your GP, your doctor, as to what's the most appropriate and what you need, and they'll advise you best on that, of course. So, hope that's been helpful. And just a reminder about my course that is now available. It is live. There's a page on my website. The course that's video recorded, really simple and easy to follow. So you might want to go and take a look at that if you think that could be useful for you. Thank you for your time. I'll be back next week. Probably stick to the same time at the moment. It's 6 o'clock on a Tuesday. But if you've got other times that you think could be helpful, do let me know, because I'm always willing to change the time, run it at a different time and see if that's more useful to people. So thanks for your time. Hope this has been useful, and hope to see you here at 6 o'clock next Tuesday for my next instalment. Have a good week, everyone.